So, dear Eva, thank you so much for joining me. It is a journey for me, and you are, for some reason, your meditations, your voice was always very important for me. So now that I have you here, I want to ask you all about of your work with this women empowerment that you do.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I do. It's interesting. I do think voice and meditations are a big part of it. You know, a lot of the premise from which I teach the work is this idea that we don't learn through our mind. We actually learn through the cells of our body. And so we're actually always learning by transmission. We're learning, you know, by how other people do, but also on a very subtle level, how other people embody. So if our parents or people surrounding us or raising us have certain emotional patterns, we'll take those on, because even our organs, even our subtle levels of our body are learning this. And one of the things that I found, you know, a lot of my somatic journey began with singing when I was younger. And so all of these exercises of opening the breath and opening the spine and the way that you prepare when you sing, they make a lot of sense, because there's a lot of reflexology between the throat and the jaw and the vaginal canal and the womb. And so if you can drop your voice, and voice projection and how to speak from within your body is such a huge part of the trainings. When I teach the trainings, I have such a huge focus on that, because I believe that if you can understand how to drop your body and speak from the organs, or speak from the breasts, or speak from the heart, you activate that in other people. So that element of voice, of where we speak from, the more people that come into a room, usually the deeper my voice gets. It's almost like I'm tuning into everyone's space, and then we're going from there. So I think that that ability to use sound vibration as a technique to calm the nervous system, as a way to direct the body where to have its attention, you know, that combine that with the breath, suggestions and movement, and you kind of really asking the body to let go and begin to learn anew a different patterning, and that generates something profound. That's energy work.
Yeah, it is amazing. Every time you hold the space, you do it with such a grace and love that even though it's through Zoom, or you know, you can feel it. So I really love this experience. And then finding out that you are holding this and teaching this to women to empower themselves, I just want to dig a lot more into that. It sounds amazing. I'm so curious about this golden egg that you have, you promote.
Oh, the jade egg. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, it's such an interesting story, and it's such an interesting part of the world to be doing this work as well, the Middle East and North Africa region. It's female genital mutilation, or female circumcision, or however they like to call it, is very common here. And it's quite, we see a lot of sex educators at this time on the planet, a lot of people teaching anatomy and physiology of the female sexual reproductive system, because initially it was very well documented in Grey's Anatomy and certain textbooks. And then you had this whole period of history where it was no longer illustrated. So the structure of, for example, the clitoris was no longer illustrated. Just the head of the clitoris was illustrated. And when people don't have a map, a visual map or a sensate map, you know, introspective anchoring, it's very hard for them to experience what their anatomy and physiology is, you know, unless they're very energy first people. But for a lot of us, it really helps to have a visual aid or something that is a feedback, so that when we close our eyes, we can really feel all the structures. And there was this long period of time where the structures of female anatomy were just not included. And so it actually generated a culture and a whole period of history where there was a deep imprinting, whether you're conscious of it or not, it lives within the collective, that there is a shame around this. I mean, even the nerve that innervates our pleasure centers is called the pudendal nerve. That means the shameful nerve, you know, like even that is, it's that languaging, but also obfuscating information communicates what we leave out. It's like when you learn drawing, you'll know that you learn a lot about negative space, not just positive space. You know, you can draw a pole or a table, but you can also learn how to draw the space that is not the table, or the space that is not the pole. And master communicators understand that what is not said is as important as what is said. Right?
Yes.
And so there's a way that we also communicate subtly to a culture, to a gender, to a generation, when we don't include certain information in textbooks, when we don't explore. And for a lot of people, if it's not written, then there's no question, so then you don't explore it any further. But it does communicate something around there not being openness and transparency. But what it also communicates ultimately is that you do not have the right to be empowered in your own body. You don't have the right to know all the background of that anatomy. You don't have the right to that. That's the domain of the doctors. That's the domain of, you know, the anatomists. That's the domain of whoever it is that isn't your body. And this has just very subtly, but also very loudly, if you know how to listen to the empty space, imprinted the concept that women and women's health is not our concern, that we don't really know how to manage ourselves. And that whole period of psychotherapy history in the 1800s and 1900s, there was a lot of testing done on women. There was a lot of, all this stuff with hysteria, and that mental illness came from, women, just witches or sexually active women, just all this imprinting around the mystery and the danger of female sexuality, right? And this is so loaded. You can look at it from so many different perspectives. But it was also mainstream. It was also like, women do not own the knowledge of even their own anatomy. I can look at an anatomy book. It doesn't make me a doctor, but at least I know what the fuck the inside of a breast looks like. But this was like, no, you don't even get to know what the inside of that looks like. It was really taken out of books. So there was this kind of really weird dark age of female obstetric gynecology, and of kind of just the mentality that we have the right to our own body. And I would say it's an echo from previous energies. We've had this throughout history in various ways, but this is the quite recent history of gynecology, and it ripples through the world of birth, that current and female women's health, really. And I think this is what we're really seeing now with this massive embracing of this female empowerment movement, is people being like, fuck you, that's my bleed, that's my cervix, that's my consent, like that's my birth, like I'm not having this anymore. So there's this kind of uprising, and it's been happening for like the last 10 or 20 years. Actually, I think it kind of really started in the 80s in a big way, and then it's gaining this incredibly deep, like psycho-spiritual energy to it, and we're seeing this across the globe, and it's so powerful. And that's really, for me, like women's empowerment is this. It's your body, but you may need to learn. So it's like something that we have to remember, right? And that's the same as the premise of all spirituality, is this idea that your soul knows, you are already awake, but there's a journey to the remembering of that process, right? We call it like self-realization or like remembering or awakening. It suggests that the part of us that is complete is already perfect, and actually it's us who have to awaken to that. And this is kind of what I think of empowerment. I'm like, well, you already know your body, and you already know your own energy, and you already know what's right for you, but you may need to learn your instinctual intelligence again. You may need to learn how to connect to it. You may need to learn to trust yourself with that and trust your body. There may be traumas there, but ultimately those are just things that we need to slowly work through, so you can come back to that state of the depth of your own knowing. And I think it's like that reclamation of deep spiritual and sovereign and physical power that is really my interest, And so I do have this like very doctory kind of mind, and I love anatomy and physiology. I'm a nutbag about it. I love it so much. But for me, it's a spiritual science. I came into the work not from a place of indignation. I never thought I would work with women. I used to work with men and women, and at some point I only had women coming to my clinic. I didn't organize it. It just started happening. So I was like, okay, I think I get it. And it started happening when I started my path as a healer. I found my sheikhs. I'm Sufi. That was a really big turning point in my life, was finding teachers who could assist me and guide me in how to manage this energy that I had, which was very sensitive, and it would hurt me. It was a lot. And they really showed me how to channel this into becoming a healer and into becoming a teacher, and how to use this in a really positive way. And I just always assumed that I would be a healer for everyone. I never thought it would specifically take me down the route of working only with women. I never thought I would become a birth worker specifically. I never thought that I would particularly have my work based in sexuality. That was never an interest. I didn't come in it like, I'm going to find God through finding my orgasm. Like, it wasn't even an interest of mine. For me, it was just about finding God. And over time, my teachers are like, okay, this way to God.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so I think what that does is, and you've got a lot of teachers of really this powerful information. And some of them come from a background of having maybe been raped, or maybe having had serious sexual trauma, or maybe having like a really intense birth experience or awakening, or maybe having had, maybe a really like painful periods, or like having to learn how to manage this through that. But the work that I'm doing is coming with this very different frequency, which is like, this is for the seeker. This is for the practitioners. This is, yes, it's a healing journey, but there's a way that this is actually completely about your spiritual sovereignty. So yes, we're talking about the clitoris. Yes, we're talking about the labia. Yes, we're talking about the reflexology in the vaginal canal. But we're really talking about it from this esoteric perspective of how the soul has its own mechanics in the body. And so it's, with the egg, the reason that I really wanted to bring the work that I have studied and understand from the Taoist lineage forward. And when I started with the egg, I mean, fucking nobody knew what this thing was. I used to clean my egg in the kitchen where I cooked and prepared food for like a whole college, because people didn't know what it was. Nowadays, you wouldn't leave like a yoni egg out on a counter. No idea. They're like, oh, that's a nice stone. I'm like, yeah, I know. I wasn't doing it provocatively. It just sometimes happened to be the only time I would have before my classes. But, now I think about that and how common, everyone would recognize what this thing is now immediately, but no one knew what it was at that time. And so I think that there's a way that the transmissions were stronger, that if this had found you, this was really meant to be something for you. Whereas now I think that a lot of people want that connection, that spiritual connection to the lineage of what this tool is. But what we're finding is this like mass market of like sex wands and sex tools and crystal energy and different eggs, and and it's beautiful to a degree, but what's lost is the real art of what it is. And it isn't a series of muscle contractions only. Yes, there are muscular toning practices with the jade egg, but it's not a series of weight bearing exercises. It's not a pelvic floor exercise. It is it really is finding, when you start to do like yoga or breath work, and you begin to find all these micro muscles in your body that begin releasing, and you can't make them release the way that you can like do this. Like you can't will it to release, but as you heal and relax, you notice that there is a way that you're controlling those muscles through releasing your emotion, through releasing an emotion, or through releasing a tension and deepening into that surrender. Even though you're not actively like pushing or pulling the muscle, there is a way that you are in control of this opening. But the way that you're in control of it is by deepening into your surrender. And then all these micro muscles in our body come into conscious alignment, and we begin to feel things that we didn't feel before. And we begin to get this sensitivity and command over our body. And I kind of liken this to like, if you see a guitarist's fingers, or like a pianist, like the micro muscles in their hands, the control and sensitivity that they have to pressure and tone it's really something that is not common, but you can develop it. This is what you can do on the inside of the vaginal canal and on the inside of the pelvis. You can generate this level of extraordinary sensitivity to healing energy and sensation that is so profoundly orgasmic. It it is a spiritual experience. And I think some people do have those experiences through birth and through sex, but this particular method is about awakening sensation that is so deep and so blissful, and so profound that you when you have that experience, you realize that no amount of Kegel exercises will ever get you there. It is really an attunement to the divine. It's like a transmission. And this is what I wanted to share with people through the Jade Egg work.
And I think that is very important because, especially in the Latin community, we were so repressed. As you said, nobody could talk about this. And now all of a sudden, this energy of revenge, of sexualize from the girls now in high school. They just want sex. They just want feelings. But for me, it's very important to link this spiritual side as well, to let women know that it's not just like an orgasm. It's more than that, is learning to I don't know how to say it, maybe to find the connection with your body and your soul, and to make aspects like more enjoyable for you. But it is a personal experience, right?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, I don't have disapproval for what's being taught when I see all this stuff out there that's maybe not that in depth, because I think it's important that more people just get a taste of it, and people who really want to go down that road, they're going to find deeper stuff if they're really on that journey, and for those who aren't, it may just bring the level of awakening and awareness that serves them and the part of the journey or the path that they will go on in a very powerful way. But one of the things that I can't resonate with very deeply is this idea of like a vengeful form of sexuality, or this incredibly, we have a very over-sexualized culture. So I come from, a lot of my background is somatics. It's how we hold emotion within the physical body. And I remember, I never forget this, is such a great quote. My somatics mentor of 6 years, she said to me, she was like, we live in a society that is over-sexed and under-touched. So we're having this experience of incredible objectification of the physical body. And this objectification of the physical and sexual body is being mistaken for sexual power, right? But sexual power actually doesn't come from, it's not an extroverted power. It's not, real sexual power doesn't come from people thinking you're sexy or acting a certain way. It comes from having a very deep connection with your own inner sovereignty and your own inner experience, and understanding that the unlocking of that is really about unlocking the intimacy that you have within yourself, your emotions and your heart. And it requires a certain level of emotional and spiritual maturity, which requires us really doing the work. And I'm all for, being sexually progressive and, go out and do whatever it is you want. But one of the things I do find is that people aren't often aware of when they're traumatizing themselves as well. And so I see this a lot as well in women who come to clinic, that a lot of the times the people who have pushed their boundaries are them. A lot of the time it's not somebody who's forced themselves onto somebody. It's this experience that women have that, oh, sexual power looks this way, or this is how I should perform. And then in the process of bypassing their own true inner voice and their own true spiritual guidance and their own true intuitive and instinctual guidance, they're actually harming, they're actually getting further away from their deep sexual realization. They're getting further away from intimacy. They're getting further away from the type of maturity within that really generates these deep orgasmic experiences. Because at the end of the day, those deep orgasmic experiences, those deep pleasurable experiences, these kind of like spiritual, sexual states of God that people experience actually comes from trusting, the trust you build within yourself. It actually comes from the band within your womb and heart that is your deep self-trust. So the whole of the level 1 classes that we do in Golden Lotus with the Jade Egg all culminate in repairing the band of self-love and self-trust within the female body. And when we have a very strong tantric channel, the result is actually modesty. The result is not, and I'm not saying you don't wear beautiful things or wear your push-up bra or something like that. What I mean is that there's an inner knowing that power is so incredibly strong that it really shouldn't be wielded it shouldn't be wielded frivolously. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And you begin to realize that the deep sexual states and experiences that you're having don't require you to be with anybody. And that sometimes a lot of tantric and powerful energy can be built with somebody through not being physical. And so you begin to kind of realign your concept of what spiritual sexual energy really is and what pleasure can look like without this incredibly over-sexed culture that we live in, where it's like, sexuality can be powerful, but something being powerful doesn't mean we should weaponize it. And I know that's a very strong term, but there is a way that we've weaponized our sexuality in our culture,
Yeah.
There's a way that we've used it to diminish what it looks like to grow old, or to diminish what it looks like to be more modest, or have a different body type, or have certain beliefs, or like there's a way we've weaponized what sexuality is. And I don't think that brings anyone. I don't think that's not a good. It's harmful.
Yes, it is. So tell me more about the clinic. How people can get in touch with you? How can we learn? Can we do it online?
Yes, I do. So in my clinic, I'm a body worker. I've been a body worker for over 12 years. So I do love to get my hands on the body and work with people and do a lot of kind of sexual de-armoring and just listen to the body. I like that space because it's energy first, and usually people don't talk on the mat. So there's a really candid conversation that you can have with the body that you will not necessarily ever have with the mind. But I really believe that and that's clinic. And when I do body work, I always say to people, like, if you want me to process for you, like if you want to just have someone process energy for you and assist you, that's clinic work. If you want to learn to process for yourself, that's coaching and mentoring. And so I do a lot of online teaching. We have online modules on the website, goldenlotusdxb.com, where I teach about these different organ systems. I go quite in depth. I love my spiritual anatomy, physiology, embryology. I believe that how we form in the womb has so much to do with the energy that flows in our body now, and that's very osteopathic principles. And I just love to get into that spiritual science of like, well, this is what the organ's doing on this level, and it takes energy and it does this, and that's why in the physical body it looks like this, and I get really excited about people understanding how simple yet sophisticated energy is, and when you begin to kind of get that way of thinking, the connection with the body opens up a lot. So I think it's very important to educate people so that they feel safe in the spiritual practice they're going to engage with. They know why I'm doing this, what it means, how extraordinary and exciting it is, and now I'm going to sit down and do the breath work. Now I'm going to sit down and do the practice or the meditation, and I'm going to go into a state, and I'm going to get myself into that state even deeper, because there's no mystery about what I'm about to do, because I already understand what this process is. Mm-hmm. And as we have this center in our mind that's 2 or 3 times larger than a man's. It's called our hypervigilance center. It stops us, it protects us from being attacked, basically. And as women, we do tend to be more vulnerable than men. So evolutionarily, we've grown in this larger place in our mind that keeps us more highly alert.
Yeah.
I think that if you can speak to people on that level of just assuming intelligence, just assume that everyone is intelligent and interested about their body, otherwise they wouldn't be there. And probably even more people than even know what's out there are still interested in their bodies and intelligent. If you can speak from that place where even if people don't know what they're understanding, somehow they're getting it, and they're really engaging, then they will open to the practice and let that hypervigilant mind drop so quickly that the spiritual progress is exponential. So I've found this to be a really beautiful way to work. So that's what I do in my online course. I explain, I give breakaway practices, little practices in case you're really busy in your day, in your life, a good 90-minute practice for each of the different organ systems. And we basically work in level 1, we work our way up from the entrance of the vaginal canal to the cervix, through each of the reflex zones in the pelvis and in the whole body. So we're actually just clearing each of the organs and detoxing and plugging back into that pelvic intelligence. And then we have a level 2, which is the gates of orgasm, so the clitoris, the G-spot, and the cervix. And that whole pelvic area is so much more open when we've gone through the process to build these very powerful channels through the whole body in level 1. So then when you're having this recycling orgasmic energy that's really just these, orgasm centers in the lower body, you already know the channels to make this energy expand through your whole body. You know how to bring it up the spine. You know how to breathe it down the arms because you kind of already prepped your body and detoxed it. So I always try to kind of teach that prep work in level 1 with the jade egg before going into this kind of deeper work.
That sounds amazing. It's something like I am very interested because it's a pleasure for all. So you send the pleasure and the energy through all your body.
Yeah, I believe that's what sexual experience should be.
I think I haven't done that. I wanted.
No, yeah, that's true. We've localized we've localized sexuality. Most people experience orgasm just in the clitoris, most women. Mm-hmm. Maybe if they're luckier or more sexually open or whatever, then they might experience it in the G-spot or in the cervix, internal orgasm. But for the most part, most women don't get to bring that through their whole body and really experience all the different channels that our magnetic sexual energy works through. And there's no reason for that because we all have these channels. The reason is just a lack of education.
Yes, we didn't know. So how long takes these classes if we are present or online?
Well, so I usually introduce it as a 5-week series, and to do one organ system a week. It's totally up. It's very much your own pace, however you like. I think there's maybe 2.5 hours of content each module. That includes recorded meditations, that includes little breakaway practices and meditations, and then also a 90-minute practice and little videos that explain different movements for balancing different parts of the body. So, if someone wanted to, I guess they could probably get through the whole thing in a day, but I think I originally made it as a 5-week series. The idea was that it would take about 40 days. It's a very powerful number in most spiritual traditions. And the idea was that through this process of 40 days of purification and ritual and intention, you could reach a state in your body.
Yeah, that makes sense because you have to prepare your body as well, right? To receive all this information and to feel it little by little.
You do. And the reality is that the energetic, emotional and spiritual bodies are much faster than the physical body. So we have to allow our physical body some time to integrate and detox. And, there's not a single spiritual tradition on the planet that doesn't have some form of movement or healing practice that goes with it. If it's yoga, it's asana. If it's Taoism, it's, Tai Chi. If it's, you name it. Every spiritual practice has some form of breath and movement that is all about integrating the prayer that you're making, Even in Islam, they have 5 daily prayers. They have, there's all sorts of different things that different traditions promote as a way to move the energy through your body, because we can't just be cooling and hypercharging our whole body the whole time without finding a way to actually allow that to flow. Otherwise, it will make us sick. It can make us sick. And so
that's amazing. I really want you to come as well. Come to the US.
Yeah, it makes a very beautiful field, and people experience a deep sense of connection, a very, very deep sense of connection when we do that group work. So, I do try to I'm busy, but I also try to take enough time for me as well, because it's important. I don't want to get burnt out. So.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I really, I'm really glad that you are in the middle of this culture that really wants to learn and to pass the tradition. You know, they are ready to awaken, and I am so glad that we cross paths as well. And if you have any message to the people that is a little bit curious about this,
give it a try. Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
I started my healing journey when I started kind of when I was quite young, and then I started giving other people healing. I did my first thing, I think I did my first thing in aromatherapy and then Reiki and reflexology or something around when I was a teenager, late teenage years. And then I learned Japanese acupuncture and somatics and things like this after that. So I've been doing this for about 12 years.
Thank you so much, dear Eva. Thank you. You are such a light. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I think we have less than a minute, so I'm just gonna send you like big hugs. Big hugs.
Thank you so much.
And can I ask you any questions through the WhatsApp later?
Yeah, please send me a WhatsApp. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave you before we cut it out.
Okay.
Big kisses. Bye-bye.
Bye. This is Awakening 593.